Have you ever wondered what happens to artifacts after they come out of the ground? Only a tiny fraction end up in a museum on display. Most are put in collection storage for future research and analysis. Tatiana Niculescu is an archaeologist and the collections manager for Alexandria Archaeology. She works with objects found on archaeology sites within the city. Some of these artifacts are small, but others, like the wooden remains of ships found along the waterfront, are very large. So what goes into caring for these collections?
Typically, when people think of archaeology, they think about being in the field and digging. And then they don't often think too much about what happens to collections when they come out of the ground and they come back to the lab. In the lab, and I consider this space to be an extension of our lab, this is where we're cleaning and recording a lot of information about artifacts, be they big, be they small. And then most of those artifacts, after they're cataloged, they are stored.
So what does a collection manager do?
As the collections manager here, I'm the caretaker of a lot of artifacts. That includes a lot of the stuff that you think of when you think of archaeology, like ceramics and broken bottles. But it also includes really big things like ships. Each type of artifact and collection has its own unique set of needs, but the basics of collections management are the same for all objects. The most important part about caring for the collection is keeping the provenience, where an object was found in horizontal and vertical space associated with the artifact. Without that information, the object has very little research or interpretive value. It may be pretty or cool or pretty cool, but it won't tell us a whole lot about how people lived in the past. Provenience information is tracked by marking all of the artifacts either on the item using archival ink typically or by adding a tag. For these ship numbers, we use Tyvek tags and a non-corroding nickel alloy staple. Archaeologists also record information about an artifact using detailed notes, photos, and even laser scans. So fundamentally, I'm responsible for making sure that artifacts are preserved so that they can be used in the future for research and interpretation or education. For objects both big and small, that means appropriately assessing the condition of the artifact, determining the best way to clean, store, and move it, and protecting it from agents of decay. So those include things like UV light, improper environmental conditions, pests, and accidental damage due to improper handling. And honestly, the last one is like the biggest problem. For things like massive ship timbers, that means keeping them wet, checking for and treating biological growth, and safely strapping them to be moved when we need to move them. The above basic principles would also apply to a stone or a jug. That doesn't have to be kept wet and it's much smaller, but it does need to be stored in a proper environment, and it needs to be stored in a way that it won't tip over, and it needs to be moved carefully. So the basic thinking is always the same, and it's all about planning out your steps and thinking through the risks and ways to mitigate them.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to know more, you can visit our website at alexandriaarchaeology.org. You can also ask us a question at archaeology@alexandriava.gov. We'd love to hear from you.